Luxxury, my man, what's up?
Diallo, my friend, how are you today? How are things going?
Things are great. It's a gray day.
It is a gray day. A little overcast.
Los Angeles, but I will say that it is bright and colorful in the world of music.
I'm glad we're talking about the weather, a little foreshadowing of the song we're going to talk about today,
Very
right?
nice.
Exactly.
I see what you did there.
So in the introduction, we usually start with a few superlatives, and today's episode is no different, but this superlative is particularly superlatively special because this time on One Song, we are talking about Diallo Riddle's #1 all-time greatest karaoke song.
That's right. It's my favorite karaoke song, and honestly, we should just stop right there because there is no greater accolade or honor for a song to be belted out
high praise.
by yours truly in a Koreatown
I've seen it. It's a beautiful sight to behold.
2 a.m. They're kicking me out, but I'm like, hey, I got one more song.
I got one more left in me, and it's a belter, and you belt it.
That's
you
right.
belt.
I do belt.
So the band we're talking about today had 2 mega #1 hits from their second album.
That's right.
In America, Everybody Wants to Rule the World and Shout were both chart toppers.
Huge.
But this song, the one we're talking about today, was not.
So why are we talking about it? Because even if it's not the band's biggest hit, it's an anthem in its own right. After its initial release in 1985, it got a new lease on life and found a fresh new audience when it was featured in the movie Donnie Darko 2001. And I'd point out that music video,
Right.
I mean, it is a classic 80s
This is one of those songs
music
where
video.
the video is almost as important as the
I
song,
mean,
right?
like, if you haven't seen it recently,
Yeah.
go back and watch it.
Stuck in my brain.
You've got a sexy librarian,
I'm so in love with her, by
a
the way.
dude in a World War II gas mask, and a chimp in a Red Sox uniform, which, you know, he would be right at home in Fenway Park, wouldn't he?
Absolutely. Green Monster. That's the one thing I know about baseball.
Well, there you go. So you come here for music facts, you stay for Luxury's one baseball
Don't come
fact.
here for baseball facts. That's a bad idea. If you haven't guessed it already, this time on One Song, we are talking about Tears for Fears, and the song is Head Over Heels.
Woohoo. I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ Diallo Riddle.
And I'm producer, DJ, and songwriter Luxxury, aka the guy who talks about Interpolation on TikTok.
Oh my gosh.
So
You did not tell me you were going to do
I'm
that.
so proud of myself for
I'm
finally
so glad
thinking
you're proud of
to
yourself.
bring in the recording of
Oh my
the
gosh.
official
What
Interpolation
is
whisper.
happening?
And today we are somewhere new. If you're watching this on YouTube or on social media, you'll see our brand new set. But for the benefit of our listeners on SiriusXM or on the podcast, I will describe it to you. We are inside an eco-friendly, sustainable studio that has been designed for us by our friends at the United Soybean Board.
That's right. No more studio built out of trees from the rainforest for us.
Absolutely.
We've gone sustainable.
About time, too.
By the way, these prints on the wall, for those watching at home, they're made with soy ink. This chair I'm sitting in, believe it or not, is made from soy leather. And all the vintage items in here, like this boom box, are all repurposed. Some actually repossessed from my Uncle Carl. So this is all sustainable stuff. It's so cool. We're really excited to be here.
All right, so Tears for Fears, let's start here. At the top, we mentioned that this is your favorite karaoke song.
It is.
Why? What makes it such a fun
Man,
song to
it's
sing?
got so many fun parts, and you know, I've struggled with this persistent cough situation. I'm on a million antibiotics all winter long. I can't do it right now, but like the thing I like about it is that he goes from full voice to falsetto.
Yes, we're gonna talk about that big time.
Also, like, it's a smart, I mean, like, this is usually a pejorative. It's a smart song.
Yeah.
Like, the lyrics, there's certain songs you just want to get up there and you want to sing lyrics like, and I dream that I'm a doctor. You know, like, you just like those kind of things.
Yeah,
It's like, you know,
they're fun
animals
words.
strike curious poses. Like, you're like, who writes that?
Yeah, that one's
I
weird.
think there was like a
Yeah.
premium
Yeah.
on amazing lyrics in this period of the 80s, and we're
Yeah.
going to get into that.
Every time you sing like a Duran Duran song, you're like, what is happening in this song? No idea what these lyrics mean.
Where were you when you first heard it?
Yeah, this song is
Over
1985, so I'm in 7th grade. And this song, you know, it's funny because Tears for Fears, up until this moment, their second album, they're a super angst-ridden band. Their first record is called The Hurting. There's a song called Suffer Little Children, Mad World. Like, everything about the band is
Pale
about
Shelter?
Pale Shelter. There's angst, there's anxiety, there's childhood trauma. Luckily, I did not suffer that myself, but I felt the feelings of the songs. This song comes out, I love the band, and it's expressing this new emotion for the band, which is love. And in 7th grade, you know, you're starting to flower, you're starting to not be like, oh, I hate girls anymore. That like vibe starts to go away. You're having your first school dances and stuff. So this song really cuts to the chase for me in that way. For my 7th grade self, like, okay, there's Jeannie Heath, you know, we're slow dancing to Alphaville Forever Young, and you know, then this song comes on, we're dancing, and we're singing, we're belting, by the way.
You hear that, Jeannie Heath?
Jeannie
you missed
Heath,
out.
if you're out there.
You missed out on it.
Never
I
forget.
also think it's interesting that you bring up the emotion because to me, how many times have I sung this song? When we were preparing for this,
Thousands.
the first question that was asked was, "What is the song about?" And I was like, "I think he's head over heels in love."
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing to me that a good pop song can be so catchy and so emotive that you can sing these lyrics that seem like really smart lyrics and never actually take a step back and say, well, what does it mean? I think that's actually a sign of really good art.
Yes,
actually.
absolutely, yeah.
So Tears for Fears are a band that we're both really excited to talk about. Luxxury, can you walk us through a history of the band?
All right, Tears for Fears are from Bath, England. It's Roland Orzabal and Kurt Smith. They meet as teenagers, roughly 13, 14 years old. Roland is already writing songs, and he needs a singer because he himself does not feel like he is a good enough singer. So they become friends, and Kurt has been a singer. He sings in the choir. He loves singing. I've heard him in an interview say he doesn't like talking very much at that age. Like singing is his only means of expression. He's a very quiet guy. So it's perfect. It's a perfect fit. Roland's already a genius songwriter. Kurt has this beautiful voice. Together, they start writing songs. And actually, Roland teaches them to play bass eventually because they get their first opportunity to be in a band. And this is around in 78 or so when they're, I think, only 17 or 18. They're very young. They join a band called Graduate. So they're in this band, Graduate, and they end up quitting. And before they start their own band, though, they're briefly session musicians for a band called Neon, which also...
I love this story.
Well, they're only briefly in this band, and they're like, we can do better. And they split, and the band actually splits into two, and Roland and Kurt form their own band.
Tears for Fears.
Tears for Fears, and the other guys form Naked Eyes.
Which is another great band out of this second British invasion. I mean,
Exactly.
there's so many groups from this period. And you just get the sense, I heard somebody recently say, England is like a prison where, everybody, was that you? It was like...
Wasn't me.
It was like everybody in the UK music scene kind of knows each other. So it's really easy for the guys from Naked Eyes. Naked Eyes does Always Dare to Remind Me, which is Promises. But, and then these other guys go off and form Tears for Fears, and they're all listening to OMD.
Yeah.
They're all listening
That's right.
to...
They're all listening to Gary Newman. They're all
Gary
listening
Newman,
to the same
can I
synthy
just
stuff.
say,
Yeah.
real friends of mine know this. For years, I tried to form a DJ collective called The Friends Electric because I love the Gary Newman song, Our Friends
Right.
Electric.
Well said about Naked Eyes, and a perfect opportunity to talk about the phenomenon of the synthy British duo,
Yes.
which is kind of happening in this moment because it's not the first time we have synthy duos. Sparks, I would argue, with their Georgia Moroder produced amazing album, #1 in Heaven, is maybe the first time we're getting synth pop with a couple of guys in that sort of top of the pops level. And by the way, a huge influence in England. Sparks, one of my favorite bands, didn't really make a dent here.
Sparks from America having a huge effect across the pond.
Sparks
I think
brothers,
that's more a fact of their timing. Sparks, unfortunately, I feel like if they had come along 4 years later, they would have been able to ride the MTV wave.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these groups, I think I saw where A Flock of Seagulls, they were like, this group would not have blown up without that video for Iran and MTV.
That's right. And Sparks, they do finally break America for a minute when they put out Cool Places with Jane Weedland from the Go-Go's. Remember that song? So the synthy British duo, Soft Cell, we've got Wham, we've got Tears for Fears, we've got Heaven 17, we've got OMD, who you mentioned. We've got Yazoo.
A lot of these groups are two dudes.
It's
Wham.
Synthy British
duos.
They're
a lot.
That's it.
Naked Eyes and Tears for Fears.
And later on, we get Pet Shop Boys, we get Erasure, we even get Goldfrapp. Two people. Two people. It's the synthy duo. So the duo energy is its own thing, and we're going to get into that because when there's two people creating together, as you and I know, and as you with your partner, it's like you are collectively doing something that the world sees as a unit, unified.
Yeah.
But what happens behind the scenes is a push and pull and a come and go that's going to come up in this story a lot. So in 1981, they're done doing the session musician thing or being in other people's bands. They start their own band. Initially, their first band name was History of Headaches, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
Which they did one better, but barely by calling it Tears for Fears. It's one of those names I think you get used to, but that's kind of a crazy name too.
It's kind of a crazy name.
Yeah.
It is better than History of Headaches.
It's a little bit better than History of Headaches.
Nobody wants that LP.
It is a little bit better than History of Headaches. So 1981, they take a cue from their shared love of this psychotherapist named Arthur Janov's book called Prisoners of Pain, which is about Primal Scream. It's about
another great group.
It's about Primal Scream. You're right. Another great group. But confronting your fears to eliminate them. That's the whole premise of not just the title, but their first record is really just letting it out. And by the way, shout, let it all out.
Yeah, I heard it.
This whole band's kind of early premise is about this bottled up British thing coming out through their music. It's really beautiful.
It's kind of a British thing, isn't it?
It's kind of a British thing.
They're all
stern.
They're like, I'm letting it out.
The guy's name is Kurt. They put out their first record, The Hurting, in 1983. It's got 4 massive hits on it. I should say it starts with Suffer the Children, which is maybe the least known, but then you've got Pale Shelter, Mad World, and Change, which to this day are songs that stand the test of time. Mad World, by the way, it's Kurt singing. Within the band, they have a dynamic of deciding from song to song who the singer should be.
Yeah.
Roland finally kind of comes out of his shell after thinking he's not a singer and realizes he's got a very rich, he's got the belty voice, and Kurt's got kind of the more melancholy voice.
Yeah.
So from song to song throughout the band's career, they kind of decide between the two of them who's got the right voice for the song.
I mean, it's so ironic that Roland doesn't start off as a singer because, you know, my first exposure to the band is probably Shout.
Yeah.
And like, it's like, who's this dude who's yelling?
Who's got confidence.
He's yelling
He's
in
got
the mic.
confidence.
It was like, it was that, he was that dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, not to create a hierarchy within the group, but like between that and Everybody Wants to Rule the World and all the songs from the Big Chair.
Songs from the Big Chair.
Yeah. You know, to me, that guy was Tears for Fears. You could have told me, oh, that's that guy, because there are 4 members of the group at this point.
Well, it's interesting you say that. We're going to get into how many members of the group are members
Are
of the
there
group
ever?
per se, and
Good
how many
point.
members of the group are in the videos and on tour, but that's about it, and then they get cut out of royalties and publishing and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to get into that in a minute.
Okay, so let's get into the song Head Over Heels. And before we get into the stems, let's talk about the composition of the song Head Over Heels. How did Roland and Kurt write this song?
Okay, so the origin of this song is really interesting because the song, by the way, just the details, comes out in June 1985 on their second album, Songs from the Big Chair. Chris Hughes is the producer. The title of the album is, again, with this like darkness of all their lyrics and titles, and it comes from this movie Sybil about a schizophrenic woman whose comfort zone is the big chair.
Yeah.
So this is a song about seeking comfort, you know, in things.
Didn't know that relationship.
Yeah,
That's really
right.
cool.
As we mentioned at the top of the show, there are 2 #1 hits on this record in the U.S.
Yeah.
It is the album
Massive
that breaks them
hits.
big, massive
Yeah.
hits. But this is not one of them, although it did go to #3 in the U.S.
Just number 3. What a bunch of losers.
But Head Over Heels actually started life as the B-side of a single from 1983. Pale Shelter came out, and on the flip side was a song called We Are Broken, which I'll play you a clip from right now. And you'll probably recognize the bit that they were like, this is pretty good, let's use this. Let's extend this maybe. This is We Are Broken by Tears for Fears.
So this is a single off of their previous album.
This is from The Hurting, right?
And it just has this B-side,
Right.
which
It's
I
kind
used
of a
to play.
throwaway.
When I used to DJ,
Yeah.
and I didn't know the backstory at the time, but when I used to DJ at the Standard Hotels, I used to work, longtime listeners of shows know I was a director of music and talent at the Standard Hotels. I hired the DJs, I hired the box models who went into the box behind the front desk. When I heard this, I just thought it was a weird sort of like interpolation of themselves.
Right.
Weird, I can't even say the word without whispering now.
Wait, hold on. You mean interpolation. Thank you very much.
Yes.
That's what I'm here for.
We're going to have to talk
That's
after
what
the
I'm here
episode. But I was like, oh, that's weird how they incorporated Head Over Heels into this song. I didn't realize that Head Over Heels did not exist yet. That's super cool. To me, that's like, you know, that's like the birth of something that's going to be really important. Why is the first thing that pops in my mind Amazing Spider-Man issue number 25?
What?
Mary Jane Watson appears in the last panel of that issue, and you have no idea that she's going to become a major
That's always exciting,
character
right?
in his life for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
rest
yeah.
of the comic book.
And then when you go back and read it, then it's like, oh my God, she was there.
That's
I
her
didn't even
first
notice
panel.
It.
That's her
so
first
cool.
panel.
I had
Nerds
no
unite.
idea.
Nerds across the world unite.
I had no idea that you
we're
have
bringing, We're bringing in comic books.
Is there a whole world in your? Do you have like comic book?
Oh, that's a whole nother
history?
brain. That's a whole
Oh my
nother
God,
podcast.
that's
One
so
issue.
Cool.
We'll
How
do
has it
one
never
issue
come
one
up
day.
till
It'll never come up
episode
again.
31?
Moving on. It's really cool to hear that that's like the genesis of something
Yeah.
that's going to be really, really special. Why does that song even exist?
So-
was it just a throwaway
Right.
B-side?
It's a throwaway B-side. Usually B-sides were throwaways. You didn't want to waste a song on the
Sure.
B-side that would be, you know, the album, the
Unless
single
you're some
itself.
of my favorite Prince B-sides are all worthy of
Yeah.
some
Oh no.
album
I mean,
somewhere,
like,
yeah.
doesn't mean they're bad. It
Yeah,
just
yeah,
means
yeah.
that there was a decision made to like not waste it
Yeah, yeah,
because it's not going to be the focus of what they said to radio and all
Totally.
that stuff. So it's a song that exists, and they start playing it live, and with the evolution of it becoming its own song.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because it's kind of
It's like New Order and Blue Monday. They're like they needed a song that
Right.
they could play.
Yeah.
And this is
they're
a little
filling
bit
up
of
their
that,
live.
right?
That's right. They're kind of filling up their live set because they only have one album, so they only have like whatever a certain number of songs, and like sometimes you need more content on
It's
stage.
crazy. Sometimes the filler
Yeah.
just reaches a new level just if you have your ears open for it.
Absolutely. So they start playing it live. They're touring for The Hurting, that album. And what starts to happen on tour is it begins to take shape as its own song. So you can actually watch footage from 1983 where they are already playing what we now know, as fans of Tears for Fears know, is this string of songs where it goes broken into Head Over Heels.
Yeah.
And then it has this sort of outro thing. They're already doing that live in 1983, way before the album comes out. So this was actually the first song written for Songs from the Big Chair, because they had figured out on stage just how
there's some magic
to
to it.
translate this B-side extended into its own song.
Oh, I love that.
And just one more thing about it. The band, interestingly, based on what we've been saying already about the band's history with the Janov and the Primal Scream and this being a love song, the band initially didn't like the song. They were like, this is a good song, but it isn't really us. They were confused by it. So I found a quote from Roland Orzabal, the lead singer, who said, Head Over Heels was tough because we were making sort of quite advanced electronic music, and then this pop song comes along. And it's like, well, what are we going to do with this? They didn't have a clue what to do with the song.
I love that. I love the fact that even they weren't quite sure what it was.
Right.
It's also weird to hear them talk
like,
about
this is good, but
this
is
is a
it
pop
us?
song,
Right.
but it's not a hard-hitting electronic underground hit like Shout
Right.
or Everybody Rules the World. Like it's weird to hear them say that this is a pop, because even looking back at the first album, yeah, it's really emo for the time, but.
Yeah.
There's some great pop writing.
It's pop writing with like some darkness and melancholy,
Yeah.
which is, again, we sort of mentioned a lot of these synthy duos, like Gary Newman's very much, like a lot of these artists. When they first started putting out singles from The Hurting, they were compared to Joy Division and like sort of darker bands. They were sort of goth adjacent. That wasn't the word at the time, but
No,
these were darker artists. And then they started because
look at the album art. It does. It is kind of bleak.
And then when there started to be articles about the band in their first videos, and they were good looking, I think it's interesting to see the old British press started to turn on them. They're like, oh, these guys are another Wham.
A bunch of pretty boys from Bath.
A bunch of pretty boys from Bath. And meanwhile, the lyrics are super dark. But that gets us to this song. That gets us to Head Over Heels. It is their first big love song, and it is the beginning of the breakthrough, like kind of next chapter for the band.
I love that. So we've set the stage. Two boys from Bath are ready to make it big with their blend of quirky lyrics, big choruses, and weird music videos. After the break, we'll be in over our heads with Head Over Heels. Welcome back to One Song. Luxury, I just want to be alone with you and talk about the weather.
Okay, I see what you did there.
Okay, in all seriousness, I'm so excited to hear
Me
these
too.
stems on this song I've heard so many times. Luxury, where do you want to start?
I'm so excited to get into these stems. There's so much deliciousness in this song. It's a very meticulously created song and produced. But before I get to that, I alluded earlier about the sort of unsung members of the band. So it's a duo, but this band would not exist without a couple of other people. One in particular is, I want to give Ian Stanley his flowers. So Ian Stanley is sort of the unsung third member of the band from early days.
Okay.
It was Ian Stanley, who was, by the way, if you don't know who that is, in the video for Head Over Heels. He's the kind of good-looking guy with a leather jacket who does the like silly keyboard solo with one finger. So memorable. We'll play you that keyboard solo in a second, but Ian Stanley.
Which he is not playing, to be clear.
I think he is playing
He
it.
is the keyboardist in this song?
So it's a little difficult to know for sure.
Okay.
That's a perfect way into the song. Lots of Rashomon going on here. He said, she said. I've heard a couple of recent interviews with Ian Stanley where you can tell he's being so diplomatic because I think it was challenging for him to be the third member of a duo.
Sure.
So Ian Stanley is also from Bath, and he meets the boys when they're teenagers. It turns out that he has his own recording studio, and in 1980, 81, 82-ish, having access to these devices like a Lindrum and Roland Juno synthesizer.
Yeah, these were not everywhere.
These were not everywhere.
Now everything's on your laptop. Everybody comes in the studio with about 8 devices.
And having it in your house is also like, that's a bonus too. You're not paying for studio time. So
yeah, that's a good point.
The combination of Roland and Kurt.
Now every home in Atlanta comes with a home studio. Like,
it's mandatory.
It's just like having a kitchen. Yeah, no, it's cool. He had the studio,
But
he had the equipment.
in Bath, England,
Yeah.
circa 1981,
Totally.
1982, Ian Stanley shows up in their lives at the perfect time where they've got this batch of amazing songs that they're writing, but they need help producing it to get a record deal. So Ian comes into the picture. He's got the studio, he's got the equipment, and he helps program certain things like on Mad World and Change. He's got the ability to have 16th notes, so da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So he's the one helping their sound come together. The songwriting, solid, it's there, but Tears for Fears, as we know it, is songwriting, it's vocals, it's also synthesizers and drum machines in the sound. So he's kind of the third he's a co-writer. He gets co-writing credits on a handful of songs. That first record in particular is mostly recorded in his studio. So he's a very important person we'll talk about in a minute. The second person I want to mention is Chris Hughes, the producer of this record. He's former drummer for Adam and the Ants, by the way.
Oh, cool.
And he co-writes Everybody Wants to Rule the World, on this record as well. He is the unsung fourth member. They're both a little bit sung, a little unsung. I guess I just mentioned them in this context because I found this quote in particular from Hughes, who describes the sessions. He gives us some insight into how this record was made, how this song was made. So Hughes, this is a quote from producer Chris Hughes, "It was essentially Roland, Ian Stanley, and I as a three-piece." So basically the songwriting sessions, Kurt was there as an important kind of counterpart for Roland, I think as a person, as a friend for many years, as a trusted confidant. But as Kurt himself says in another interview, he's really doing 20 to 30% of everything musical about Tears for Fears. It's about 70 to 80% Roland across the board.
At this point, yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting to kind of get that insight because you just don't know what's happening behind the scenes with the duo. Everything seems like both of them did all of it. So the core team making this record and making Head Over Heels is Roland, Ian Stanley, and Chris Hughes.
Even though I point out that if Kurt is doing 20%, and there are four
it's
guys
an important
there.
20%.
I mean, okay, so he's not doing that extra 5%. That doesn't sound like a slacker.
This is no shade on Kurt. And
Yeah.
Chris Hughes, by the way, to be fair, is very careful when he says that to make sure he's recognizing Kurt's God-given talents, which are massive. Kurt would come in, he would be involved with vocals and other ideas, he would sing, but it wasn't the core of the ideas. The core of the ideas was Roland, Ian, and I. That's the quote from him. So I just thought that was really helpful to kind of paint the picture of how these incredible, iconic songs get made. I made it almost halfway through the episode before I said iconic. What kind of prize do I get for that? Is there any kind of reward?
I think you get a vinyl copy of our theme song. All right, we're both drummers. I'd love to get into some drum stems.
Let's talk about the drums. So, what's funny about this song? It wasn't until I listened to the stems isolated, which I'll play for you in a second, that it dawned on me that after years of watching the video where Manny Elias, their touring drummer, is playing the drums, and he's got these really iconic fills, which I'll also play for you in a second. It wasn't until I listened to the stems that I realized that it's not a live drum track. It is a programmed Linn drum.
It's a drum.
I never noticed that until I listened. So let me play that for you.
I think to my ears, I was like, that sounds like some drum machine.
Yeah, they're both credited on the album. So Manny Elias does get credited with drums, but I think that maybe on this song in particular, I think that's because there's that coda. There's that. I'm going to talk about the arrangement in a second, by the way. That's its own thing. But at the end of the song, it goes into this other song, which is, I think, taken from a live performance, which you can find on YouTube. It's exactly the same.
Cool.
So technically, he's on the song, but it's just at the end. The rest of it's a Linn drum, and let's hear that right now. And by the way, that's the dead giveaway right there. When you hear that da 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 da, and all of those snare hits are exactly the same, that's the dead giveaway that it's a programmed drum machine.
Oh, wow.
It's just volume that's going up, but the sound itself is identical the entire way across. So that was the clue that I was like, oh, wait a second. One thing I need to point out for all of the stems we're about to hear is how meticulously crafted this song is as a song, the songwriting, but also the little choices and decisions about what happens in each part where. It's really beautiful. Here's an example in the drums where that beat goes through the whole thing. It's a drum machine beat, but there'll be these little tiny variations like this one here. That little thing with the hi-hat, and it matches what's happening in the strings. I'm kind of jumping ahead for a minute. There's that little string pizzicato thing, which I'll play.
Oh, one of the best parts of the entire song.
Everyone loves that. When you hear them together, you can hear that little drum programming thing was done to kind of have a counterpoint just for that tiny string moment. So together they sound like this. It's just this little tiny moment. This entire song has a lot of those
that's what
things.
I'm saying. There are just little points that come in. They don't do them twice,
right?
But they're just there, and they're perfect.
And perfectly put, because that's one thing. in 1984-85, when the song is being written, to be doing what you just described with drum machines and synthesizers, to be making those little variations is more challenging because, as we sort of alluded to in the New Order episode, you're programming the entire machine. You don't have a computer screen. It's much harder to do. You've got this tiny little window. You have to kind of resequence the whole thing. It's a whole world that is far more challenging than what we're used to now when we're making electronic music. It's a mad world.
I will say, is that a violin? What is that?
I'm pretty sure that's a Fairlight. I'm almost positive.
What is a Fairlight?
So a Fairlight is an early sampler / synthesizer. It's one of the more relatively affordable, because before that there was the Synclavier, which is very expensive, but it's still pretty expensive. My understanding is that Ian Stanley possessed all these machines and he had a little bit of money, a little family money, so he was able to afford these devices like the Fairlight. So when I listen to this, here's that pizzicato. I'm nearly positive they didn't hire any violin players because they're not credited. It's possible, but I also know that you can do that on a Fairlight.
That's super cool.
That's pretty cool, right?
That's one of those little things that they threw in there that just, it takes something that was already like at a 90 to a 95.
To maybe, and we might even get to a 99 by the time we're done with
Oh,
all
we're going
these
to get to
stats.
103. I think they got extra credit on this one.
Let me just play a couple of those sick fills. Like I said, whenever, all these years I've been watching this video, if you ever watch this video with me, I will not be able to restrain myself from playing along to these fills that Manny Elias is doing visually, but they are programmed. All right, here's Sweet Fill number 1, probably programmed by Ian Stanley and not performed by Manny Elias. I mean, to my ears, that could be a live drummer overdubbed, but I'm pretty sure it's not, because all of the sounds, like the kick and snare
What part
sounds,
of the song is that? Can you play what part of that song comes in?
Here's the context of that. That's at the na-na outro. And he does one more of those. Again, I'm just going to have to do it in the room. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. I just love drum fills like that. And if that's
have to talk about you restraining yourself.
If that's what I think it is, which is I think a Lindrum programming that fill, that is somebody took a week, not quite a week, but it took a long time to program those hits with such intricacy and to make it sound like a real drummer.
Yeah.
Or it's Manny Elias and just the credits don't reflect.
Well, I think the big picture about the drums in this song is that, like whether they're just turning up the volume or, it's a fill, it's always building up to the next thing that's about to happen. And that sounds like 101, but a lot of people don't do it.
No, but those are the little details
and
that we're
those are the
talking
details
about.
that like really get your, they get your blood going.
And that's what tricked me all these years into thinking that it wasn't a drum machine, is that there are so many intricate little parts that it sounds like a human playing it.
Let's talk about the bass.
Let's talk about the bass.
Let's talk about the bass.
The bass line might be my favorite part of the song, and I say that
We've talked about this.
Immediately think of 30 other things I also love, but this bass line is something special. This is Kurt Smith on bass. He's a really talented bass player. He plays bass live too.
Yeah.
I think it's a Steinberger bass. It's got this very distinctive 80s sound, which is very trebly. And this bass line is in the verse. I'm going to play it isolated, and then I'll play it for you along with the vocal. And
so that it makes context.
Something very interesting happens, and I'll explain in just a minute.
You know what's crazy? It sounds a lot like The Pretenders. What is that song? Like, I went back to Ohio or whatever. It sounds a little bit like that bass line, which I would have never drawn a connection between.
Well,
those
it's
two.
interesting. I did find a connection in an interview. They talk about what it was inspired by. And tell me if you hear the connection.
Yeah. Yep, I totally hear the connection. So it was inspired by David Byrne and the Talking Heads.
That's right.
Take Me to the River.
It's inspired by Take Me to the River. That's Tina Weymouth on bass, playing the Talking Heads cover of the Al Green song.
You know what people should do if you have some time is go on YouTube. I think it's still on YouTube. You might have to have Peacock Plus, but go watch Talking Heads perform Take Me to the River on SNL. It's one of the greatest performances that you'll ever see.
That's a band.
It's an insanely good
Like every year, my love for them just grows. It's
Don't
such a special
know
band.
Love you like I do. I mean, like, my mind is kind of blown. Now I'm thinking about My City Was Gone by the Pretenders, Head Over Heels by Tears for Fears, and Take Me to the River by Talking Heads. There's a
connection.
through line
There's a
between
through
those
line.
bass lines. That's really
And
really
I'm just
cool.
looking. That song
And
came
I
out.
bet you could probably find some obscure Muddy Waters song that like
Right, that walking bass line.
you know,
Well, jazz,
infected
like,
all of them.
the bass, like walking bass lines, you can find a million jazz songs that
But
idea.
that's a really cool connection.
That is a cool connection, right?
I
love it.
agree. You were gonna play the bass stem with the vocal in.
So now I'm going to show you how that bass line is mirroring what Roland is playing. And we're going to talk more specifically in a minute about, we'll just talk about the vocals on its own. So
Yeah, don't think this is us giving you your feel of the vocals.
No.
More vocals coming.
there'll be more vocals later.
I wanted to be with you alone and talk about the weather.
So rhythmically, he's mirroring, and some of the melody notes even literally are mirroring what's
Yeah.
being sung, and then going back to not mirroring it in this incredibly special way. It's counterpoint that then turns into matching, then back to
this
counterpoint.
honestly becomes chicken or the egg to me.
Yeah.
Like, did they have the vocal first and then the bass line, or the bass line and then the vocal?
We can't know for
we
sure.
can't know.
Can't know for sure.
Unless Roland, unless you're listening, Kurt, Ian, Annie.
And then in the chorus, the bass line is this, which again, I'm going to do it without the vocals and then with, and it's again part of the magic of the interplay. Again, this is the core duo of the band, vocals and bass. Here is just the bass line in the chorus.
Wow.
And now I'll play it for you.
That really needs context because that sounds like a completely different song.
Here it is with the vocal, and you can hear how he's sort of bobbing and weaving around the vocal.
Okay.
Something happens and I'm head over heels. I never find out till I'm head over heels.
There's so many like wonderful decrescendos in there. Like you're just like, holy shit, this is a lot of stuff coming together.
A lot
really
of stuff
well.
coming together, a lot of parts that are interweaving and coming in and out and responding to each other in just the right way. We talked about like the funky pockets with like Stevie Wonder's many superstition clavinet parts. It's doing a very similar thing.
Similar.
It's finding a place. If it were like 1/16th note over or 1/2 step higher, it wouldn't work. Wouldn't work.
I love that.
Perfect interplay of parts.
Should we talk about the guitars?
Let's play some guitar parts. This is Roland on guitar. He is a really great guitar player, and you'll hear some of his interesting, intricate parts as well as his like wailing solo-y parts. All right, so here's Roland's guitar melody in the intro.
You know, there's a word that we don't use this often.
Okay, it's not iconic.
How did you know?
Oh boy.
That is an iconic guitar riff right there, my
It is an
friend.
iconic guitar
The
riff.
second, let me tell you, as a person, as a veteran of the karaoke wars, when that guitar comes in, people are like, ooh, like, you know, like people are like, get happy, like, you know, all the 40-year-olds really come out of their shell. That was a great guitar riff. There's probably some other guitar moments that I'm not even thinking of.
Absolutely, and it's also important to just pause for a second. Remember, these guys are ostensibly a synthy keyboard duo.
Yeah.
What starts to happen when they're live on tour for that first record is they're starting to integrate live instruments. So we have Manny Elias on drums, and in the recorded version of this song, there's a outro that's very live band. They're kind of jamming, and you hear the live drums do crazy fills. Also, guitar. Guitar in a synth pop band, at the time, they were making a real choice to say, you know, we're going to have guitars. Because Gary Newman, philophically, a lot of these bands were like, we are anti-guitar.
We're throwing away our guitars and we're buying keyboards.
So not only
Shout
are
out
they
to
playing,
James Murphy.
not only is that a guitar, an electric guitar, but it's playing like a kind of American sounding like, you know, like
I know,
wailing.
he's wailing.
It could be a Journey, you know, Neil Schon kind of part.
Don't you dare bring Journey into this.
But it's interesting because that's a real choice they made. And I think it came out of a little bit swinging for the fences on this record. This was a record where they swung and hit big time in terms of making it big in America. But guitars were something that Americans liked and needed in their pop music. So I think that was a real conscious choice to add it. And anyway, that's this incredible counter melody to the primary one, which we'll be hearing in a second, that legendary piano ostinato. But first, let's play a little more guitar for you.
Can I say without context?
Yeah.
That sounds like Soundgarden. That sounds like some 1990s
Right.
grunge.
When you don't hear it in the mix, it could be almost any kind of like, yeah.
So where in the world of this song?
I'll
is
give
that
you
part?
some drums and bass so you can place how it works
where
in
it
the
is, yeah.
song.
You keep your distance with a system of touch.
So that's happening very buried in the mix. You may not have noticed it all these years.
You know, when you play, I love it when you throw all the context back in there because now I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard that before. But when you hear it in isolation, you're like, that could have been its own composition.
I'm so glad you said that because across this song, there's probably 100 different melodic and rhythmic ideas. And
yeah.
it's sort of the opposite of, I would say this might be like, you know, we talk about we love and adore and worship funk music, right? But so much of funk is frequently about kind of almost setting a drone kind of hypnotic state with repetition. And the variations are kind of all happening on the vocal line and on the vocal top line. And instrumentally, if you're the bass player or guitar player in James Brown's band, for 10 minutes you might be playing the same part. This might be the counter opposite of that, where in a compact 4-minute song, there's probably 100 different variations happening throughout all the instruments across time. And that's like a synth pop thing too. You'll find that in a lot of Depeche Mode and a lot of bands like that from the era.
Let's hear another guitar part. I feel like you have another guitar part for us.
I'm gonna play one more little guitar moment. This is what we were talking about earlier, where things that just happen once and never again. I can only find one instance of an acoustic guitar in this song. It's incredibly brief, and here it is. Right, I'll show you where that is in the mix. I'd never noticed it until I was like going through this, but this only happens right before the coda. Blink once and you'll miss it.
It's just a little bit more texture, a little bit more fill. Again, I
little
feel
variety.
I feel like this whole song is constantly like build you up and then it brings you here, and then it builds up some more and it brings you here, and then yeah. So when you get to that part of the song, they were probably just like, we don't want it to sound just like another part of the song.
Right.
Let's add in one more element.
Yeah.
To make it. I feel like this
Yeah.
is like almost like a master class in just music creation. I mean,
Absolutely.
like there's so many
That's
things
well
that
said, yeah.
they're putting in there, and there's a math quality to it.
There's a texture quality. What we've been talking about is all of the parts, all the
Yeah.
melody parts and the rhythmic parts. I want us to take a step back for a second and talk about just the song structure, because that in and of itself is unusual.
Yeah, break it down, bro.
So this song starts with, and it's a perfect intro into our piano riff, the iconic piano riff that we've all been waiting for.
I know, we've been teasing you. It's coming.
It's
Go into
interesting
it.
because that iconic intro with the piano riff the piano riff only happens in the intro and in the outro. The verses and the choruses, it's kind of like there's an entirely different song stuck in the middle. So I'll just tell you the structure. It's intro with piano riff, verse 1, chorus 1. There's that keyboard solo, which is unusual after the first chorus. Verse 2, chorus 2. And then we have this outro, which is like about 40% of the song.
It's long.
It's very long.
It's long, I'll tell you.
And we haven't heard that piano line since the beginning.
Yeah.
And it finally comes back. Go ahead.
As a person who sings this in karaoke, you don't realize until you sing this song just how many la 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 la's there are. It's about damn near half the song.
It is literally 50% of the song. If you add the intro and the outro, that's its own song. That's about 50% of the time duration. And then there's this song kind of in the middle, the verse and chorus, and they're half and half of the song altogether. And don't forget, there's that coda tacked on the end where they go into the sort of jazz funk fusion moment, which had come from the live show. So the song has like all of these different parts, and it's both a masterclass in melodies and variation, but also in arrangement.
We're talking about Tears for Fears, Head Over Heels. We can't talk about the song without talking about the piano. And I think that our listeners have been very patient. Walk us through the piano, this wonderful piano riff that sort of makes this song the iconic song it is.
I would be more than happy to walk you through it. The credit goes to Andy David, who I don't know much about, but he gets a grand piano credit. Let's hear the grand piano, which you will then hear is layered with several synth layers probably. There might be the Jupiter, there might be a Fairlight, there might be a DX7, but it all is playing a single note melody, which is just layered and is massive, and it's got reverb added, etc., to be the iconic. Is that the third time we've used that word today?
In the last minute.
Here it is. And that part has a little synth fill.
I just thought it was like a grand piano in a cathedral.
It sounds like a grand piano in a cathedral, absolutely. And there's a little
Really high ceilings.
a little arpeggiated synth thing that comes in the middle of that.
That happens? Let's hear it in context.
I'll play that for you in the mix.
Again with the builds, these guys.
They like their builds. They like
Roland
their
and Kurt, you like your
crescendo.
builds.
They like their crescendos and their decrescendos.
No, but I'm saying, like, it's like, okay, we've been doing this thing for like the last 4 bars, the last 8 bars, so the next 8 bars gotta
never
be
hear it
different.
again the same
There's
way.
gotta be one more element that's in there, because even if they don't hear it, they will hear
I
it.
don't think there's a single set of 4 bars throughout the entire song that happens exactly the same way again.
It's great.
Yeah, it's really great.
The builds.
The builds. And then in the verse, the piano switches to this. Some drums. Bass line.
But traditions I can trace against the
I mean, it's so good. I could literally just listen to that piano, even though that piano is doing something very repetitious. I could listen to that piano. I don't
It's
know
delicious.
what they did when they recorded it, but it sounds so pure is
Yeah.
the word I want to use. Like it
Lush.
just sounds pure and strong and like I don't know.
Well, the
There's
addition
something
of-
that really works about that.
The addition of grand piano and live guitar, electric guitar, and then a lot of synthesizers and a drum machine.
I think for me
it's
it's
this human-machine interplay
Yeah.
that we hear in so many songs we love.
I remember when I was like still in high school, I was like, I don't know what made me say it, but like, because I was a drummer, but I was like, the things that I like the most in songs are piano, violins, and drums.
Oh, interesting.
And for whatever reason, like
Violins?
if there's and by the way, this has all 3
Yeah?
because that pizzicato thing,
pizzicato,
whatever
right.
that's supposed to be, it's always heard it as a violin.
I heard it as strings, too.
I just, it sounds really pure. It sounds really good. I don't want to even delay. Let's hear something else.
So I mentioned Ian Stanley before. In the video, he's playing the synth solo. I'm pretty sure he also played it live. I do think this is a part that he came up with. And let's just listen to it. And you gotta do this. Yeah! You gotta do the yeah.
Reminds
Yeah!
me of the end of Revenge of the Nerds, you know? Like,
Oh yeah, that's I know exactly what
Sonic
you mean. That kind of
keyboard.
horn.
It's a very sort of
Horn
like,
sound?
It's a very thin
Yeah,
synth-generated horn
that's
sound.
right. That doesn't sound like a horn.
It doesn't sound like a horn.
Right.
Just to me, it sounds like the 80s.
It sounds
I feel like
the
I need
80s.
a mullet
It is
and a headband.
Exactly. Dun 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 dun
Yeah,
dun
yeah,
dun
yeah.
dun.
There will be whole generations that are born and die and will never know Revenge of the Nerds because there's so much problematic material in it. But maybe we can save the performance at the end
But
of the
that's
movie.
Lamont's big moment. Clap your hands, everybody. Everybody, clap your hands. And
You've
that
been
is-
asking all year to do the Lamont rap, and I'm glad you finally got it in there. You finally got
It's
it in
so
there.
good.
No, it is really good. Gosh, these pianos are so good. Is there something else you want to play from the piano?
There's
family?
these little, I found these cute little, I like, you know what, I love to find cute little things. Like in Prince Let's Go Crazy, when there's like cute little thin synthesizers you barely notice. Here's some cute thin eighth notes that I never noticed before. So that's this little moment that happens in the second verse for again,
Sort of like
variety.
sort of like a ukulele.
It's very, the pluckiness is very
Yeah.
ukulele-esque. I
I've
can
been
see some.
transported to Kauai.
I was transported to Largo in the early 2000s. I'm sure some comedian there would be doing the
Oh,
ukulele,
I could see that.
ukulele songs of the early 2000s at Largo.
All right, now we've come to the vocals. We've said a lot about Roland's singing,
Yeah.
but now we want to hear his singing.
We're going to hear Roland's isolated vocals in just a moment. Now, we mentioned previously that the songwriting process is it's Kurt and Roland, and they'll decide from song to song who should be the singer.
Yeah.
In this one, Roland is the lead singer, and I found this cool.
I'm sure there's some backing vocals from Kurt.
There's some backing vocals from Kurt. I think he doubles him on the falsetto part, which we'll hear in a second, and certainly the
can't wait.
chorus. I found this great quote from Kurt, which is just sort of explaining their process of how they make that choice. Kurt goes, "If it's a softer song, it's normally me. If it requires being belted, it's normally Roland. My voice is a lot darker, more melancholic, and Roland is more of a shouter. He's trying to make a point, which is very loud."
Man, I'm Team Roland. Shout out to the belter from Bath.
Shout out to the shouter who shouted the song Shout.
Exactly. That was a cool Kurt quote. Let's hear some Roland.
We did it! That
I
was
know, we
great.
did it.
I feel accomplished.
Let's hear Roland.
One last thing to point out before we hear the vocal. We mentioned before how there's this interplay between a sort of regular voice and falsetto. This is very hard to do on every other line, which is what he's doing. A lot of times there'll be songs like we talked about.
It is hard to do.
Empire of the Sun. Oh, but this man can do it. Empire of the Sun, for example, we talked about how the verses are frequently just sung in normal voice.
Yeah.
And then he jumps to the chorus. He jumps to
He
head
does
voice.
in Empire of the Sun, he does the pouty voice, and then he goes
Right,
into
the pouty voice.
He goes to the falsetto.
I remember the pouty voice.
But no, this is a big back
You got to
and
make
forth.
this change back and forth like every fourth or fifth note.
I wanted to be with you alone.
That is very hard to do.
It's fun though.
I wanted to be with you alone
You can hear Kurt there, can't you? Yeah, very distinct.
and talk about the weather.
I very clearly hear Kurt add his voice to that falsetto part.
Yeah, it's in there. It's in there. But I mean, like, man, this is just like, that feeling when you chills up your spine or
Yes.
whatever. Like, it's
I'm
hard for
getting
me
the
to hear
chills.
this stuff without like being like,
It's so exciting.
let's go to Koreatown right now. Like, forget the rest of the show. Let's just go.
You've got to get it out. You gotta shout.
I gotta shout.
You got to shout. Let it all out.
Let's keep going.
Let's hear the chorus.
Something happens and I'm head over heels. I don't take my heart, don't break my heart down, throw it away.
I feel like on this show we get really granular. How many Rolands do you think are in there? I feel like there might be like 4. Like
Yeah.
it feels almost like a chorus of Rolands.
It's definitely at least double tracked, and I think
Yeah.
Kurt is also there, probably also double tracked.
It might be 3 Rolands,
No
1 Kurt.
fewer than 4 vocals that are stacked together. There could be
Yeah.
16. I know that they were using 64 tracks at a certain point.
Yeah.
They could have 64 in there. It's hard to say. But what's interesting
But it does sound like a chorus, now that I hear it.
But what's interesting is that there's no harmony. There's no harmonizing. They're just singing a single note.
Something happens and I'm head over heels. I don't take
Right? There's no harmony.
What I hear is I hear one Roland singing it straight and one Roland really hitting the something happens. Like
yeah,
he's really
a lot of
hitting the.
different characters. You're right.
Yeah.
I think he's doing a lot of different.
I feel like there has to be a term for that.
For what?
Is there a term?
For what?
I never fly down.
I see what you're saying.
It's like an extra vamp on it. I feel like
Yeah.
we talked about it in the Britney episode.
Yeah, a lot of people got
Yeah.
mad at us for that one.
Oh no, they get mad at us for a lot of things. But I mean, like, yeah, I love it. It's bratty.
It's bratty.
Head Over Heels has it's like a little bratty. And for those people writing in about my catchphrase, maybe it's bratty.
Let's go into verse 2. To me, might be my favorite part of the song vocally. We were talking about variety. So some of the melodies from verse 1 return, but you start to get this call and response thing. There start to be variations, things that weren't in verse 1, and it's very sophisticated the way it's put together. There's point, counterpoint, call and response stuff going on. Without further ado, verse 2.
Have you no ambition? What's the matter with my mother and my brothers? You stupid thing never changes when you're acting your age.
Yes, that is a part. That little thing he does in the background,
yeah.
that is something because I never had the stems,
Right.
and I've only heard what was
really have to
commercially
guess
available.
what that is.
I have never known what they
really
say. Can you
have to
play that
guess.
again one more time?
My brothers, you stupid thing never changes when you're acting your age. Dreaming of
Awesome.
nothing gets done when it's hard to be.
They've got like 85 songs in this song. Like
There's-
I feel like nowadays they would take each individual part that's good and make that the song.
You could probably extricate 20
There are
amazing
at
songs
least
from all the melodies and
100
ideas going
songs
on
in
here.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
It's super
but
cool.
it's so satisfying that they've made it a compact
Yes.
3.5-minute pop song, 4-minute pop
layer
song.
on layer.
Yeah.
And so like even as you're grooving to this part, there's something in this ear like singing something
Yeah.
completely different, and like I love that.
It's got that wonderful thing that a perfect pop song has, where everything that's happening you're excited about, but you're also like anticipating the next exciting thing that's about to happen. You're like, oh, that next part's
Absolutely.
coming up. Oh, that part's coming up. Oh, that part's coming up.
When you go to Cold Stone, you don't just get your flavor. You're like, you know what, I'm gonna put some caramel on this. And yeah. And then right when the time's right, I'm gonna drop some toffee in. Like they're giving you like additional sweets at every turn.
That's the exact
so hungry.
metaphor, analogy, simile, whatever the hell that was, is
Yeah,
exactly
I don't know
where
what that
my
was,
brain went.
but I like it because it really is about like pouring like a little bit of extra.
Yeah.
And then I like their
Sauce.
restraint.
Yeah.
I like the restraint.
Is there restraint in this
There
song?
is restraint in this
I don't
song
know that
because
there's any restraint
they only
in
did
this
that pizzicato once.
Oh, I see what you
They
mean.
don't do that
Right.
that thing about nothing ever changes when you're acting your age.
see what
That
you
doesn't
mean
happen
by
in the
restraint.
first verse. Like,
It's not restraint
no.
in terms of all of the ideas they're going to pour into the song, but it's restraint that any of these ideas happens ever again.
You know, we're going to talk about samples in a second. But one song of theirs that I really, really like is "Sowing the Seeds of Love." I've always felt, even when I was a kid listening to it, that it was their attempt to do a Sgt. Pepper's-esque
Yes, very
Beatles
Sgt.
song.
Pepper, very George Martin.
But there were about 4 songs in "Sowing the Seeds of Love,"
Yeah.
and so it goes from one part to another part. They're really crafting like classical level songs with like, you know, this is the first fugue, and then we're gonna go to this part, like, and then we're gonna come back to that part at the beginning. They're really operating on like almost like a classical.
And the
level.
mastery of the fact that that is in a top 40 pop song, that's what makes it so
know.
incredible.
Let's
the fact
bring
that
that
this
back.
was on the radio and
Yeah.
was a huge hit. You know, it wasn't number 1, it was
I mean, it only
number
went
3.
number 3.
It's
Again, they were losers. but-
indelible pop classic though, which we adore to this day, your number 1 karaoke
I'm
song.
so on board.
All of that with all the complexity, that's a mastercraft right there.
Hit us with another vocal.
So let's talk about that big ending that we were referring to earlier.
Let's talk
The
about the ending.
Let's listen first. And we get about 90 seconds of that, by the way.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there is the closing line in my mind's eye. And the la-las, it's interesting, we were thinking about it because it's obviously a trope, right? It's like, where have we heard this before? Well, how many songs can you name with a
No,
la-la
I mean, to
ending?
me, okay, so let's say something real quick. People know me, they know that I'm a writer by trade. I love great lyrics. To me, la 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 is like, ironically, the first 2 letters in lazy. Like, I usually hate it, you know? And I can think of a million songs, everything from la 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 la, he goes around the world like la 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 la, and la 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 la, like Kylie Minogue, which actually I kind of like that song. But like, usually I am anti-la. But the fact that they somehow pull it off, I feel like by the time they get to their laws, they've earned the law. Because I think there's just something catchy in a song about an occasional law. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you don't have to even speak English to enjoy an English song with the word la 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 all over it.
Exactly, and I love also the reference, which seems to be baked into it. I mean, the 3 songs that jump to my head that have done that, coda that's a la la coda is... So we got Hey Jude in 1970 does the La La
Sure.
coda. And then in 1971, we have T-Rex doing it in Hot Love. And then in 1972, David Bowie does it in Starman. So I think there's a little nod, a little tip of the cap to these famous La-La outros.
We don't have to disagree. I'm going to
Okay.
disagree. I think that there is I think if you go across genres, maybe with the exception, ironically, of hip hop, there are so many. I mean, like if somebody tried to compile all the songs on Spotify of like, these are the La 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 songs, I think you'd be there forever.
I agree.
You
Oh,
know,
no,
like,
no,
there's a bazillion.
But I
Yeah.
don't think we are disagreeing. I think what we're both saying is that that is a trope. I mean, like the idea of tropes, these are things that show up in songs from one to the next. Sometimes they have an origin, like the da 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 da. That's actually, I only recently learned it because that's like such like a cliche. Like how many songs have you heard da 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 da?
Uh-huh.
That's called the Ellington ending because it comes from Duke Ellington's Take
Yeah.
the A Train. So sometimes there are tropes that come from something and then they just become a thing everybody does. And maybe we'll never find the origins of the La La ending, but I'm pretty sure like all of the songs we've just named are kind of coming from this idea of like, how should we end it? Let's do the La La ending.
I think
it's
yeah,
a choice
I think,
you make.
I think La is just an easy word to say. But again, I think they've earned it. I mean, like, you know, I want to say a little bit about the lyrics of this song. If you ever have the opportunity, it's worth checking out some of the lyrics. I mean, like you're talking about, you know, one of my favorites was, but traditions I can trace against the child in your face won't escape my attention. Like, to
Wow,
a
what
certain
does that
extent,
mean?
I don't know. And I feel bad because
What does it mean to you?
I went digging for, you know, sort of like the definitive, this is what head over heels means
Yeah.
lyrically. I'm kind of glad that there's a lot of there are a lot of theories out there,
Yeah.
and none that I saw coming from the band themselves.
I think that's the way it should be. Yeah, I think it's great to have your own interpretation. And I don't know if I would believe the band if they had, because by the way, I've been researching this stuff. There's so frequently the band talking about the meaning changes from one decade to the next. They had a meaning at the time, maybe it changes over time, maybe they decide to answer differently.
And it changes for
your
audiences.
interpretation is all that matters.
My father was a painter, and I went to a lot of art gallery openings with him, and I would hear him tell, people would all inevitably ask, John, what does this painting mean? And I would hear one explanation, and then literally a week later, we'd be at another art gallery, and he'd be like, same painting, completely different explanation.
And he probably genuine, authentic answers.
My dad wasn't
just
trying
changed.
to trick.
Right.
Yeah, I think he was just like, even my interpretation of some of my work, and then sometimes I think it was just because he knew this person was probably looking for one explanation, another person.
Or he was sick of giving
another.
the same answers, so he had to
Or
make himself interested.
sometimes it was dad being a little mischievous, but I think it's cool when we sort of leave it up to the listener to determine
what
it
do you
means.
think that line is about?
I have no idea.
You have no
Not to
idea.
this day. I don't know what the child in her face is,
Yeah.
but I can imagine what the child in her. Maybe it's Spielberg famously said to his child actors, just you have to look at it as if it's something you've never seen before. And to his adult actors, he would say, imagine you're a 9-year-old seeing it for the first time, and that's how you always get that Spielbergian look of like.
Wonder.
Jaws, like whatever that is.
I think you're nailing it too specifically with this band because almost every song through this period, the first 2 records in particular, there's something to do with childhood. I mean, he's literally talking about when I was a child. Everybody wants to rule the world is kind of like the childhood need for power when you feel powerless as a child. Shout, shout, let it all out is I wasn't heard, so listen to me now.
Yeah.
This song also feels of a piece with that because it's talking about, my mother and my brothers used to breathe in clean air, dreaming I'm a doctor. So he's sort of a
Dreaming
child.
I'm a doctor is one
right?
of my favorite
That's
lines.
a childhood line.
It takes me back to when I thought, I'm just going to do really well in school and get a really safe job so that mom and dad never have to worry about money.
Wow,
But I was a pretty happy kid. I think that it's actually one of the bigger ideas that I hope that we've sort of unpacked is that in a lot of Tears for Fears music, there is this idea of childhood trauma and the way that it, shapes us in growing up in our relationships. I think we all hear all that in their music, and I hope that some of that has come through. And by the way, due to today's show, I learned new lyrics that I love from this song that I didn't know until
Stuff you
today.
never noticed before?
Nothing ever changes when you're acting your age. I didn't know that until today.
Interesting.
I'm so thankful that we have the stems. Thank you for playing that because I didn't know that. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my previous favorite line from the song. It's hard to be a man when you've got a gun to your head.
Wow.
I always thought that was a very, cinematic line.
Yeah, right. I can picture that. Right.
Gets the people going. So again, I think that lyrics.
That's the ultimate
writing,
childhood fear too, right? Like guns and power, and it's hard to be a man. How can I grow up if there's a gun to my head?
I'm such a shallow kid. I was just like, it's hard to be a man when there's a gun to your head. I'm John McClane, I was just thinking. But you, of course, have brought it back to
just fantasies of childhood power. Yeah,
childhood power.
Yeah,
I love it. Hey. Whoa, this place looks familiar.
It's good to be back.
I don't know if this place is sustainable, but I like it. Let's continue talking. We want to talk about some of the songs that sampled Head Over Heels and Tears for Fears in general.
All right, so I'm excited to get into some interpolations and samples. We're going to start with this one from Cash Money and Marvelous. This is Ugly People Get Quiet from 1988.
All the wheels are still, he is. All the wheels are still, he is.
And a classic 1988 style sample with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
original with just a hit.
I'm actually more interested in the fact that group is called Cash Money
Right.
before the Cash Money from New Orleans that we all know.
It's not the famous Cash Money.
Holy
it's
smokes. Okay.
early
You're
Cash
like,
Money.
Cash Money sampled Head Over Heels. I was like, where was I? I was DJing in those years. Okay.
But it's funny you should mention that because we'll get into in a second. I would imagine the high ticket value of Tears for Fears samples that came soon thereafter.
Okay.
But before we go there, there's one more interpolation, which maybe you noticed at the Super Bowl in 2022 when this happened. I love that one because of that scream at the end.
I love it just because it's further evidence that black people really fucks with Tears for Fears.
Absolutely. Well, it's perfect.
Like that was absolutely, if you're a certain age, it
Yeah.
didn't matter if you're black or white. We definitely love that song.
Well, this is exactly right because this is that 2022 Super Bowl halftime. That's
Right,
Mary
and that
J.
was
Blige.
Mary J. Blige, yeah.
She's transitioning from Family Affair into No More Drama, and the band just throws in just for a
Yeah,
minute.
that means that
little
somebody was
interpolation.
probably maybe Michael Bearden. Shout out to Michael Bearden. I know he listens to the podcast, but like, you know, either him or somebody like him was probably like, hey, what if we did that transition out of Family
They're
Affair?
having fun.
Yeah, and that was cool because that wasn't just Mary. That was
Right.
Snoop and Dre. It was sort of like a salute to the West Coast hip hop. They had Kendrick. Yeah, it was right there in SoFi
I think
Stadium,
Eminem was up
right in
there,
our
too.
backyard
Right.
here in LA.
And what 50 came down from the ceiling, right? 50 Cent.
It was insane.
It was crazy.
It was a really fun concert, and that's where I saw Beyonce.
Well, it's perfectly segueing into the thing I was going to say about how, to your point exactly, Tears for Fears are beloved in hip hop,
Yeah.
which is interesting because a lot of, not only are they sampled by a lot of hip hop songs, but they're kind of the most high ticket musical borrowing. Like The Weeknd, Drake, and Kanye, and Nas, and David Guetta. These are the people that can spend a lot of money on samples. You know
Absolutely.
what I'm saying?
You know what's
Not anyone can sample.
I'm going to
Tears
be
for
a
Fears.
little controversial here.
All right,
We
do
don't
it. I'm
usually
excited.
disparage.
Court
I
controversy.
don't know that.
Get those clicks.
As much as I love Tears for Fears, I don't know that anybody's ever sampled them to great effect. I don't know if anybody's ever sampled them and elevated them the way that other people have been sampled.
Interesting.
And
Like
elevated.
you mean like to sort of transform
yeah, like
it?
you know, in preparing for this episode, I was actually, you know, I was looking on the whosampled.com, and I was like, has this song ever been sampled by anything I love? And you know, I know that Nas sampled it. I know Rick Ross apparently sampled them last year. You know, like people have continuously sampled them. I think of all of them, maybe The Weeknd came the closest to sort of capturing the feel of Tears for Fears.
Yeah, it's a good question whether any of these samples are truly transformative. There's one actually in particular. I actually kind of like the Kanye West Coldest Winter one. So this is Kanye West. This is Coldest Winter.
Off of 808s and Heartbreak.
That's right. That's right. That's the album. Which comes from the Tears for Fears song "Memories Fade," and I'll just play you that, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, no, the fade is like,
Memories fade, but the sky still linger. Goodbye, my friend. Will I ever love again?
That one's cool because it's obviously an interpolation, and he transforms the lyrics a little bit. So it goes from "Memories Fade" to I love the fact that that's a transformation. As it's both a sample flip and an interpolation.
not even my favorite Kanye song named Fade, but I hear you.
So what's interesting is that Drake's producer 40 said Drake became super obsessed, crazily obsessed is the exact quote, with the melody on Coldest Winter, which led him to discover Tears for Fears. So we were talking on the Doja Cat episode about how the producer discovered Dionne Warwick as a result of being sampled on another track. Similar situation. So this is like an example of where samples are a discovery mechanism.
Oh, I mean, like that guy. Yeah, exactly. He discovered Dionne Warwick through Usher,
Right,
which is,
right.
you know, it's like I read online the other day. Somebody was like, I discovered Daft Punk because I was really into that movie Tron, and I was like, oh my God, how old are you? And how old am I?
Right, Tron from 2010. Not the original Tron, but
No,
the 2010
no,
version.
2010.
Right. So after he became crazily obsessed with the melody, Drake did this.
I'm trying to do it all tonight. I got plans. I got a certain lust for life. And as it's
This is from
Man, that is earliest Drake.
that is early Drake.
That
That
is
is
early
that's his
Drake.
third mixtape. So Far
Yeah.
Gone from 2009,
Yep.
and it's the sample.
2009 Drake.
And it's a sample from another Tears for Fears track, which is, I wouldn't call it a deep cut, but it's an album cut for sure.
Yeah.
It's the drum beat from Ideas as Opiates from the same album, The Hurting, and I'll play that for you now.
I can't stand the rain.
There's just that little drum machine intro. Lust for Life is the Drake track from 2009. And then I'll just play one more for you. This is the Weeknd track that you were alluding to. This is Secrets.
Secrets, which also draws in another song from the 80s. Let's hear it.
Let's hear them both.
Everybody here wants you.
I love that choppy sample. It's cool.
It's so easy to hate on The Weeknd, but I always feel like The Weeknd, he understands that new wave synthy sound of the 80s probably better than anybody. I still think he's probably got the best new wave sample of all time, which is
The Susie one?
Glass Table Girls.
Yeah.
Which was the Susie sample. So
I
I mean,
love
like I think sometimes you have to get the music to understand what to do when you sample the music.
Yeah, he's proving that he's got some bona fides in the 80s department.
Oh, for sure.
In the new wave department. And that's, by the way, sampled from Pale Shelter right here. Tears for Fears, also from The Hurting. And because you pointed it out, I have to also.
By the way, I love Pale Shelter. It's not a song that I
So good.
liked when it was out, but it's a song I discovered like in my 20s, and I was like, oh, this one kind of goes.
You know, The Hurting is such a great record. It's the one before Songs
Yeah.
from Big Chair. It's their debut. It has 4 bona fide smash great pop song hits. It's a little more melancholy and synth pop dark, but it's a great, great album. And then, as you pointed out, Secrets also has this other gem of an interpolation.
The secrets that you keep when you're talking in your sleep.
Which, of course, comes from the Romantics' 1983 hit,
Absolutely.
Talking in Your Sleep.
I hear the secrets that you keep when you're talking in your sleep.
Interesting to point out that it's really just the lyrics and the rhythm. It's not the melody itself.
Not at
that's
all.
Taken.
Yeah. And he even changed the word. Like they say, when you're talking in your sleep, and he said,
Yeah.
when you talk in your sleep.
It's just different enough, but not different enough to not require
Oh,
payment.
yeah, exactly. You
They
gotta
are credited
Definitely
as
reach out
writers.
to a few lawyers on that.
Everyone is credited with right. One more, and I'm going to play it for you because this one blew my mind.
Okay.
So,
It's Christmas time.
do you recognize that one? Recognize that song?
Oh, yeah. That's Do They Know It's Christmas?
Exactly. Do they know it's Christmas? I never noticed it until I was doing some research for this episode. But that drum beat is a way slowed down sample from The Hurting by Tears for Fears. Here it is. They took those sounds and sampled it, and that's that boom, boop, boom, boom, in Do They Know It's Christmas?
You know what's weird about that to me? And this is coming from somebody who's not made platinum hits, but I'm always like, why sample that?
All right, so we are not sample snitches. We're not.
No.
We're not.
Somebody in the
snitches.
comments said they're like, this man snitch every episode.
Nah,
I'm like,
man.
no, that is not
These
what
people
we're doing.
don't know what the word
this
means.
stuff is public record.
It's public record, and/or it's in the publishing, and/or it's on Who Sampled, and/or.
In our
Interviews.
defense, there are some samples and some things out there in the world that I don't think are public record that we will never bring up because why should we?
Well, this isn't one of them. I am bringing it up because Ian Stanley,
I tried.
the unsung third member of Tears for Fears, I was listening to an interview with him when he cops to there being maybe kind of something similar about this song. This is Mad World by Tears for Fears.
I find it kind of funny. I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had.
So again, this is Ian Stanley
Yeah,
from
great.
Tears for Fears,
Uh-huh.
who points out in this interview very publicly, knowing that it will be heard, so it's not sample snitching, how very similar it was when they wrote it to this.
He's got people who've been working for 50 years. No one asks for more money, cause nobody dares, even though they're pretty low and
There's a little bit of a vibe there.
What was that?
That is Yusuf, a.k.a. Cat Stevens, Matthew and Son. And I hear some similarities personally.
Oh, heavens, yes.
Personally, I hear some similarities. But again, I'm not revealing this for the first time on
I don't
the public
know,
record.
man.
But that one's pretty close.
That was pretty snitchy.
I mean,
Tears for
snitch-
snitches. Tears for snitches.
Snitching, by definition, means you're the first one, and no.
And
no.
he dry snitched on himself, didn't he?
He exactly dry snitched on himself. Thanks, Ian Stanley.
Hey, are you starting to feel weird? I feel like we're going back to the sustainable studio. Before we wrap up, I want to tell everybody listening again, please go back and check out that music video. It is hilarious. In addition to the singer Roland trying to get the attention of a sexy librarian that you clearly
I
have
have
not
not
forgotten.
gotten over her. No, she's beautiful. To this
I
day.
get it.
I love her.
We can find her. There's the internet. You're married.
I'm okay. I'm
You're
good.
fine.
I'm good now.
The fact that it's shot inside a library. There's a random dude in a gas mask. Like I said, there's a chimp dressed in a Red Sox uniform, making that chimp the most mature Red Sox fan in Fenway. Ooh, got busted twice in one
I want to
episode.
stay away from that smoke.
Hey, man, I went to college up in that city.
I don't want to catch a stray.
Boston knows how I feel. All right, so we've said a lot about Head Over Heels, which I think its legacy, ultimately, other than being a perfectly crafted pop song with amazingly smart lyrics, it will also go down as my favorite karaoke song. Let me ask
Yeah.
you, what is your favorite karaoke song?
Oh, damn. Well, we recently had a karaoke night, the HARTBEAT, the One Song Team, and I had a lot of fun with Weezer's Buddy Holly. That one just like worked
That's
for me.
your, okay, right
That was,
on.
yeah. If we were about to go do it right now, that would be my first choice.
Well, you know what?
but I would definitely join you for this one. I would
Oh, you know
belt it
what?
out with you at the end.
Maybe we can get Roland to DM us, and maybe we can get Rivers Cuomo to come on the show sometime.
That'd be fantastic.
That would be really a lot of fun. Hey, Luxury, help me in this thing.
Okay. Well, I'm producer, DJ, musicologist, and songwriter Luxury.
And I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ, Diallo Riddle.
And this has been
Interpolation.
Nope, this has been
Interpolation.
No, got it wrong again. This has been One Song. We will see you next time.
Maybe. I'm just kidding. I'll be back. I'm a
Thank God.
sustainable. We're
Couldn't do this
sustainable
without you.
hosts.
We are.
This is a sustainable
Friendship.
Thank you to the United Soybean Board, and we'll see you next time.